Welcome back to ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell. This is Talking Tax with Tom Yamachika. And we're going to talk about the DOE today and whether it has achieved, whether it is a monopoly for education in the state. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Today we are going to be talking about our State Department of Education. Unlike most states, we have a, uh, a control over our K through 12 public schools statewide, as opposed to in local communities, with towns or townships or counties. So typically, education is paid for on the mainland by property taxes at the local level. Here, it's paid as just part of statewide expenses. It's a very, very large part of our statewide budget.
How large?
Uh, I don't recall offhand. It's I think a couple of $1 billion.
Yeah, that's a lot of money in Hawaii. That's a substantial percentage of the entire state budget. You mentioned the difference between Hawaii and other states, and it's more than just a jurisdictional difference, in my opinion. When Linda Lingle was running for office first time, she did have a platform position on DOE, and what she said was, "We have to allow each island, each county, to do its own public education." And there were a lot of good reasons for that, but she never got anywhere with it. The union was against her. And I think a lot of people didn't care. They thought that it would be fine to leave it as a state function. But looking back on it, Tom, was she right?
You know, I think the problem that has led to us doing this show is that there have been a number of incidents that the state DOE was behind that, um, let's say, could have been done a lot better. We've already talked about DOE fighting with other agencies regarding getting kids to school in Kihei. We've talked about its multi-million dollar, but in my opinion, imbecilic effort to cool the classrooms with solar air conditioning, where the air conditioners were designed to run for just half a day. Uh, I was also appalled by the DOE basically slamming the door uh, on the employee unions, including HSTA, regarding working conditions during the pandemic. I mean, the DOE's response basically was, well, look, the laws are suspended, so, talk to the hand. Okay? Um, and some of our loudest gripes have been over the lack of transparency regarding fiscal matters. There's a sister nonprofit called the I want to say Hawai'i Education Association, but that's probably not the name. Um, it put this nonprofit through 4.5 years of litigation um, over an effort to get fiscal information from DOE, with the result that it finally got the information, but it was outdated by 4.5 years.
Well, we have, what shall I say, more than our fair share of private schools, the HIAS, highest schools, and they're either the Punahou Iolani school or maybe they're religious schools, but they compete.
They do, but you know, parents got to pay for those, and that's why some people think that real competition, for especially people in the middle to lower income strata, who can't afford public school. I mean private school tuition. So, so the question then becomes: look, do we have, or do we want to provide, or should we provide choices for parents, um, for school systems to compete with the DOE?
Well, the point I was thinking about was that why do we have so many private schools? A lot of private schools. And it's because they offer, even after the parent is paying twice, right? He's paying with his income tax, gross excise, whatever funds, state funding. Even after that, he manages to dig deep in his pocket and find the money to pay for the private school. So it's remarkable how many people do that. And why do they do that? Because they want a better education. They're not confident in the public school system. They're not confident of DOE. And I think, they're voting with their feet on that one. They're paying the extra price to send their kids to these private highest schools, merely to escape the problems in DOE.
There is, at least recently, another alternative, and what I wanted to do today is talk about a couple of alternatives. One is the one that we already have, which is called public charter schools. Uh, what those are schools that are public schools, so they take in all comers. So you just have to apply. Uh, the the school's tuition and fees are paid by your tax money, just like any other public school. The difference is that it is usually run by somebody other than DOE, by a nonprofit. For example, I was on the board of Goodwill Industries Hawaii when we started one, and it's now the Kapolei Public Charter School, and that one's going great.
As a member of the board and as a tax observer, you would know that DOE does not treat charter schools as well as it should. Am I right?
It's just a different process. Charter schools are, they have their own budgets, and and they get allocations of state money depending on how many kids go to them. Just like any other school, and they are staffed with public employees, just like any other public school. Again, the only uh, difference is that the management is different, subject to regulation by what we call the Charter School Commission, and they are there, just like a bank regulator, to make sure that the school is doing okay. That if there are problems like fiscal problems, and there have been some, then they have the authority to shut the school down. And this authority has been exercised.
So what's the difference? Just the management of the school?
That's right. And that can be a very big difference. A charter school is not subject to the one size fits all mentality that DOE administrators have come up with for all of the other schools in the Hawaii public school system.
Well,
They
isn't
can.
that a great idea? Haven't you really, stumbled on a kind of solution here? Why don't we change the way the management is operated? In other words, take the system in the charter schools, however that is distinguished, and make that the system for the whole DOE statewide.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure you can find people who are willing or able uh, to go to some of the rural communities. So DOE may have a place, but the problem, I think, that in parts it's grown too big for its britches, and it's had, uh, at least in the past, manifested an attitude of, okay, well, you know we're the monopoly, we're everything, and you say what we do, or our way or the highway.
Well, that's what happened when Lingle tried to look at the model of having each county operate its own schools. The DOE was monolithic, and with that, the DOE plus the union and plus a certain amount of complacency on the part of the public, she didn't really have a chance to change anything. But I don't know why we don't change it. I mean, you could say that there are disadvantages, okay, to running the school system county by county. However, I think the relationship between the parents, the community, and the school would be better, and thus would be an encouragement, a motivation for the schools to do better education. What are your thoughts about that model? Wouldn't I'm not talking about charter schools anymore, although I continue to feel that the charter school model should be expanded in Hawaii. But what about the model of having county by county and bring it down to the community level, and do away with this huge bureaucracy? Everybody knows how huge and intransigent the DOE bureaucracy is, and getting worse. Wouldn't it be good, like antitrust, to break it up?
I have mixed feelings about that, primarily because when you go to some of the counties that don't have as much money or don't have as much kids, you kind of stand the risk of getting the short end of the stick. Oahu, with more kids and more money, supposedly, would be able to afford higher priced everything, better quality and better talented people.
I'm talking about a DOE that would fund county by county. And in the same way, the number of students and so forth in the school. So there's a certain continuation of that equity, if you want to consider it an equity. But the management is left in the county.
Well, I think you can change that even with the DOE that we've got. It's just a matter of more empowerment to the school level, and less to the administrative bureaucracy. I mean, why the heck do you need complex areas, superintendents and area superintendents and superintendents and deputy superintendents? Um, it just kind of sounds like a lot of these positions are spending a lot of money, and for what?
I knew a principal of a school here, a good school in Oahu, and he could not stop criticizing DOE. He really couldn't stand that bureaucracy, and he happened to be candid about it. I'm sure a lot of the other ones feel the same way because it's overpowering for them. And if they're committed to try to improve public education, they're frustrated in every way by the way DOE operates. So it's that bureaucracy with all those layers of bureaucratic jobs and people and union positions, if you will, that make it very hard for principals and teachers to function in the way they think appropriate.
I'm not sure that the problem is, the presence of the union per se. But if you have central control over curriculum, central control over, um, personnel policies, central control over, everything, then it's really going to be hard to run a school.
Well, you say
Especially,
control, but it's not creative control, and it's not faithful to what the kids need. I mean, we talked about,
yeah, it's
and you
just
just,
control, administrative control.
yeah, control is a bad word. What about the creative possibility? I mean, for example, DOE had not paid attention to the infrastructure. It had never paid attention to air conditioning, and it took a governor with a really special initiative to come in there and talk about air conditioning. How come the DOE wasn't doing that? And I think there's a lot of other issues like that where they get stuck in their own bureaucracy.
Yeah, no, I don't uh, dispute that at all. Um, and part of the problem may be that there's this bureaucracy that's uh, kind of dealing with the school system in the abstract, as opposed to with a local community that they can see, touch, and feel. How do you put out something that's one size fits all? Because that seems to be what they're trying to do.
Well, I mean, arguably, it's a statement of efficiency. And if you have a huge organization and you can, have economies of scale, but I'm not sure that really works. I'm not sure that economies of scales is functioning in DOE. Furthermore, if you give me, it's my personal view, and I mentioned it before. If you give me the choice of having whatever economies of scale are possible by a monolithic organization versus better education for the kids even if it's not as efficient, I would choose the latter every time.
Yeah, so I think whether it's a charter school model or county by county model with some light regulation on the top, uh, that may be kind of a better choice overall for what we have now.
But let's go to your, tax view of this, the tax foundation view of it. Are we spending too much money on too little? You mentioned all these layers of management, and everyone knows. Stop people on the street, and they know about this. It's just common knowledge that there are many too many layers of management in DOE. Everybody knows that. So I can't imagine how that is an appropriate expenditure of public funds. There's got to be a better way. There's got to be a cheaper way. There's got to be a way that doesn't lay this huge multi-billion dollar burden on the public. Your answer?
No, you're absolutely right. And again, the key I think is to identify where you can have economies of scale, and as opposed to where you just have you know bureaucracy and monolithic tendencies, and that doesn't help anyone. Uh, if you want economies of scale, you can keep that, and maybe you have a central purchasing department that works for some companies, um, a central personnel organization. We already supposedly have that. We have Department of Personnel Services in the state in general, um, and yeah, you can have some economies of scale. You can implement those, and I think you should be breaking through the rest. Now, we've talked about the DOE model. We've talked about the charter school model. There's another model I think we should be talking about, and that is the school voucher model. Now, this is something that has been pushed to a greater or lesser degree in mostly red states, and the concept there is that each parent is given a certain amount of public money, and I think the national average is like $3,700 per kid to be used for uh, the kid's education. So you can take that $3,700 and and use it for the public education, send the kids to public school, or if they want to go to private school, you give the voucher to the private school, and supposedly the parent would make up the difference in tuition between the $3,700 and whatever the private school charges.
You have, a religious element to the voucher, the way the vouchers work in some of those red states. If you do that, and if you, treat this DOE juggernaut as a monopoly, which it is, in large part it is, the choice of that word for the title of this show is totally appropriate. You treat it as a monopoly, and then you say, well, we're going to let people, break away from that. We're going to give them a voucher worth a few $1,000s, and they can apply it to a private school or a public school or, something other than DOE, maybe even homeschool. I don't know. That's another model, homeschool. You let them have that option, you're going to take the money away from the monolithic DOE. Now, all those layers of bureaucracy, all those people, who want to do it the same way they've done it before, who want to hold on to their bureaucratic domains, they're going to have less money. And this is going to undermine their, what do you want to call it, their fiscal operation. And they're not going to like that. So politically, vouchers are a problem.
People trying to protect their fiscal fiefdoms um, is going to be a problem no matter what situation. I mean, no matter what scenario you look at. But I think the operative element here is: do we want to give choices, to parents and kids? Do we want to, use uh, the tax money that they've paid uh, to uh, to use for religious education if that's what the parents want, or to homeschooling if that's what the parents want? I mean, a voucher system typically will do this. There are states that have enacted what we call educational savings accounts, which is kind of the same thing, except you basically apply to the state for uh, reimbursement of education related expenditures, and they'll do that up to the amount in the account. And that's popular in some red states as well. The blue states don't like that because they like their unions. In our case, we have the teachers union and the government employees union, among others. United Public Workers for the custodians and staff. Uh, they have an interest in maintaining public employee status for for the school employees, and that's what you get with a charter school. Uh, all of the folks hired by the charter school are indeed public employees, and uh, and presumably parts of the bargaining units that these unions maintain.
The educational, unions are monolithic. They are so strong because they have so many members and so much money as a result. And it makes me uncomfortable when I see a union so strong as it is in education in this state. Can anything be done about that?
I kind of dispute whether I think the unions are strong. Um, Teachers are not the most well-paid people in the universe. That's a known fact. If the unions were stronger, that wouldn't be the case.
Well, let me go to teachers for a minute. Let me go to UH. Let me go to the qualification of teachers. I could wake up one morning in my senior years here, and so could you, and say, I would like to do more for the community. I would like to teach kids. I can't do that. I have to go through a kind of gauntlet of education and licensing and what have you. And that would be the case even if I had some experience from another state. So I'm troubled, but and maybe the union is right to try to protect their existing members, but there's a lot of talent out there who could be good teachers. They have no way to get into it.
They would need to realize that there's stuff they need to learn as well. There are uh, classes that I could take, for example, in how to teach, um, presentation skills, how to teach adults, how adults and children differ in how they learn, and there are differences. We do have an interest in making sure that the people in front of our kids are not only have something to teach, but also know how to teach.
Yeah, well, true, and certainly we wouldn't want to unleash tax lawyers all over these kids. God knows what it would do to these kids. But the problem can be resolved with a lot less than a 4-year degree in education or a master's degree in education. How much really do you have to learn to convert your life knowledge to something that's teachable?
Teaching certificate you can get in, I think, 1 or 2 years.
1 or 2 years is a long time, Tom. Well, let's move on to homeschooling. Now, some people who do homeschooling, and this was like revealed during the COVID pandemic. Some people are good at it. Other people maybe not so good at it. Where does this fit in all of that? If I want to homeschool my kid, if I feel that I can, even without a teaching certificate, right? If I want to teach my kid, tax law at home and give him whatever I can give or her, why not? And why am I not entitled to some compensation from DOE, or am I?
That's kind of a part of the system that's in place in several states. Several states with education savings accounts will pay for homeschooling. Okay, um, in I think charter school states in the state we have, that won't fly because you really have no idea what kind of a quality education you're giving the kid. Even though it is not something that the family can complain about because it's their people doing the teaching. As a societal matter, you might want to. I mean, you might have a cause to complain about that because you want all kids to have minimum to meet minimum educational standards.
Well, I keep hearing an echo of we do it this way because we've always done it this way. And indeed, Hawaii is really stuck in this statewide thing, this bureaucracy. Hawaii is not going to get to county management, and people can't afford to increase the schooling under the private school system because it's too expensive for them. And the number of people who are doing homeschooling has probably shrunk since we have eased ourselves out of the pandemic. But query, if I look at the legislature, if I see this huge budget, if I see all these levels of bureaucracy, and do you see any light at the end of this tunnel for reforming education in the state? There are reformers out there. They write and speak about it, but nothing ever happens. And you get that same kind of we do it this way because we've always done it this way. And I don't see any real possibility of change. Do you, Tom?
I think I'm a little bit more optimistic. I mean, if you keep pointing to all of these disasters that have happened, um, like the solar air conditioners that only worked half the day, that uh, the needless fights that have been picked with other agencies over Kihei, the needless fights that have been picked with the unions over the pandemic restrictions. You can, I think, make a good case to lawmakers that the existing systems got the existing system's broken. It's got to be fixed.
How?
Giving parents alternatives. I think parents got to have alternatives, and then under the capitalistic um, model that we have adopted for our economy, that the competition will help the everybody fix themselves.
What would that bill say?
Well, one way to do it is break up the current DOE into county boards. That's one way to put everything under the uh, charter school commission. Have it more of a global focus and basically put um, complex areas uh, under that commission and eliminating everything above them. That's another way.
Sounds like the essential problem here is management, and it has to be reorganized from a management perspective in terms of selecting managers, making sure there aren't too many of them, reorganizing the structure of the DOE. But of course, there are a lot of people who would oppose that simply on a knee-jerk basis. And I wonder if there was a bill out there that somebody could structure that would change the management in DOE.
It take a lot of work, definitely, and uh, any major change like that has to happen through the efforts of maybe several hundred people. You get a number of people with various interests together at the drafting stage, have them come up with you know a draft that has uh, everybody's manao in it, and and then look forward to convincing the legislature that this is the way to go.
Well, we know the unions have a lot of political power. I mean, it's a relative thing, of course, as you mentioned. We know the bureaucracy has a lot of political power and money. But query, is there a countervailing organization that could coalesce around a few hundred people who would like to see reform at the management level? Is there any organization, a nonprofit, a cause organization that exists today that could carry the torch on that?
I don't know if there is. I mean, I think it has yet to be formed.
All right. So, what message would you leave with the public?
Well, I think we should be really thinking about choices to give parents in the way that their children are educated. There are, problems with with the DOE system that we now have. Uh, at least with with the public charter school system that gives people choices. Um, and what we also, I think, need to look at is the system that the red states have. Why do people like those choices in the red states, and see if there are ideas we can bring back to here.
Yeah, the better you can do at public education, the more you can incentivize kids to have a good life, make some money, qualify for good jobs, be entrepreneurial and start businesses, and mostly stay in Hawaii.
It'd be an important part of our existing society.
Very important. So, yeah, I think we have miles to go before we get there, but that would be a good target.
No, thanks for having me on the show.
Aloha.